Kintsugi Heroes acknowledges funding and was made possible with support from the Community Broadcasting Foundation. Find out more at cbf.org.au. Welcome back to Kintsugi Heroes, helping people tell the stories they need to share so you can find the stories that you need to hear. This week, John Millam met with Glenys Reid, CEO of the Chatty Cafe Foundation. Glenys's journey took her from a high-flying corporate career to facing tough challenges in 2017, including employment struggles and mental health issues. Drawing strength from her family's resilience, particularly her father's wartime experiences, she founded Chatty Cafe in Australia in 2019. Despite facing national bushfires and the COVID-19 pandemic, her initiative now spans over 230 venues, creating vital social connections in the community. Glenys advocates for kindness, mental and social health, and the power of one person to make a difference. Enjoy this one with Glenys Reid.
So good morning and welcome back, Kintsugi Heroes listeners. It's a privilege today. I get to talk to somebody that I've been watching from afar for a few years now. And I would like to welcome Glenys Reid to the Kintsugi Heroes Stories That Matter podcast. Thank you, Glenys. Thanks for joining us.
Lovely to be here and having a chat.
Absolutely, just having a chat, right? So over a coffee. And of course, Glenys is the CEO of the Chatty Cafe Foundation. That sounds fascinating but of course you have a long and interesting background to get to there. And rather than sort of me share that with the world, I'll offer that to you to share as much as you like in a sec. But of course, the Chatty Cafe Foundation is essentially one of my favorite things in the world, sitting down with a coffee and a caring intention to have a conversation with somebody either you know or even a stranger. So what a brilliant idea. So Glenys, how on earth did you get to there?
Well, a long and interesting journey. To focus specifically just on Chatty for a minute in terms of that bit happened as a result of I had my own experience of loneliness and social isolation, which is what Chatty is focused on in terms of members of the community that might be in that space at that point in time. And I was quite shocked about that experience, and it was very unexpected and quite frightening, really. Sort of find yourself the next day without a job. And I'd sort of looked around because I felt lonely. You know, I was used to being with a team of people and loved my team and loved my job and whatever, and sort of became a bit of collateral damage to a circumstance. And I looked around, John, and I noticed a lot of people sitting by themselves in cafes and restaurants, etc. But I'm fairly eccentric, and so I sort of would reach out and make some joke about something happening in the cafe or something, and engage that person who was sitting there by themselves. And 45 minutes later, we'd be having absolutely marvelous conversation and laughing and whatever. But it was just fascinating. Those people that might be sitting by themselves, they may be having, fine time and, fully engaged in whatever they were doing, but often they were sort of using, in my experience was they were using laptops or phones or books as a bit of a prop, but they were actually looking outwards and socially engaging with what was happening in the cafe. And they might talk to the staff or they might talk to the barista, but they wouldn't, there might be three people sitting alone at tables next to them, but they wouldn't reach out.
No.
They wouldn't say it. I want to join me for coffee. And I just thought that would be fantastic if people all started chatting to each other. And then I got told about this program in the UK, Chatty Cafe UK, and contacted them. And they were terribly excited to think someone might want to bring it to Australia. And that was my grand plan. And I didn't have the job that I wanted and had used to have. And so I thought, well, I have to create myself.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a good idea at the time. Little did I know what it meant getting into a charity in Australia meant. Oh my goodness, has that been the journey? But that was back in 2019, and I just took off, and the charity, despite national bushfires at the time, you remember, end of 2019, terrible. And then COVID hit in March of 2020, and then COVID through 21, 22. But we're still here. Chatty Cafe, John, is still here despite all of that. And for that part of my journey, I would say I'm very proud to say we've got over 230 venues across Australia, and a whole bunch of 70 plus volunteers who are just creating opportunities through these cafes, restaurants, pubs, clubs, community centres, neighbourhood houses, etc., and providing opportunities for libraries, etc., for people to come together and have a chat. So
amazing.
That's worked well, and I think of it as turning lemons into lemonade in terms of how I just, for myself personally.
Yeah.
It was sort of a serious case of serious lemons.
So you're adding sort of farm produce producer to the list of accomplishments. So 2019 Chatty Cafe kicked off, inspired by the program that, as you mentioned, in the UK, which is fab. And we can talk a bit about the Chatty Cafe. Certainly want to. Well, I'm just thinking the person who was sitting there, who then at a point where stuff had gone pear-shaped, right? So you keep the fruit analogy going. You were in a tough spot, right? And so tell us a bit about the person who was then able to take that tough spot and turn it into a social enterprise that is making a difference in the world. Glenys, how did you get to be able to take that moment of challenge and turn that to good? What led up to that?
Well, I think the moment of challenge happened around mid-2017, actually, and I would say I didn't immediately sort of become this sort of person then sort of looking for what next. So there was a period of incredible difficulty and mental health issues around that period of time leading up from 2016 actually into 17 and then 18, and it was really fascinating. I was looking for jobs, and I was 65, and I'm embarrassed to say that I would myself, when I was in a professional executive role, look at resumes, and the person was over 65, I would just cast them aside. And here I was in the same situation going, oh my God, I'm very skilled, capable, professional, Asian, USA and Australian experience, government, not-for-profit, consultant. It was like, what happened? And so, I did spend about a year trying to sort of get myself another job, and it was really, really difficult. And I think out of that, that's where the resilience really was driven from, I think, at that point. And I've got a bit of a little interesting little backstory to that resilience. My father was a prisoner of war for 3.5 years with the Japanese, and he was in Changi and on the Thai-Burma Railway.
Wow.
And my mother was a nurse's aide in Darwin post the bombing, I would say. So I grew up, my brother and we grew up, that was our background. We grew up that period of my father's life, 42 to 45, and he'd only been in the army 6 weeks when he was made a prisoner of war. And he'd been working in the Defence Department, and he'd been desperate to get to the war. And then he got to the war, and it didn't have good outcome for him. Singapore went under, and that was it. And that 3.5 years defined him. And our growing up was wrapped around that experience, John, of him and the colleagues, the friends he made, the friends he lost, his experience being on the Thai-Burma Railway, his experiences medically, emotionally, etc. That defined him, and that was a key part of our life. So I grew up with a family that we weren't a family that took sickies or didn't cope or didn't just get on or try our hardest. That's who we were.
Mm.
So I think that whole growing up was a huge strength for me in facing that. And I'm aware that people face potentially similar circumstances as mine, and have to seek significant help and go to clinics, etc., for help. But it never occurred to me. Although from a mental health perspective, I was suicidal, and that was difficult. And I didn't, sort of go down that road. So yeah, I think the resilience is in my background, and my family's attitude to life and work, and really survival. I think it was sort of survival kicked in. Of course, nothing like my father had experienced, but I think you go into, all right, this has happened. Where do I go to from here? What do I do?
That's such an interesting, such an interesting insight. Your father did often a moment of existential crisis for all of us is defining, and yet perhaps for people in that, like your father and other members in that environment, it was existential crises every day for 3.5 years. And,
Mm.
often that can have a very telling impact on how a father can interact when he comes home. Did you find that, how would you define your relationship? Like obviously it's an impressive and inspiring story, but were there difficulties in that?
I just adored my father. We were very similar, sort of chip off the old block. And I think for him, I think the significant thing that we experienced from him was that he never shared the details until one night. He was probably, golly, 70 something. And he took a bottle of red and he went into the study and he started writing. And he had a diary that he kept. He could have been killed for that if the Japanese had found it. And he had kept a diary, and he had that diary, and he used that as a reference tool. And he went into that study every night for quite some time, and then he ended up having the memoir published, which was great, and he copies to the War Memorial, etc. And that's how he told his story. But I think we're incredibly lucky. If I look at some of the families whose primarily men come back from war, and the post-traumatic stress disorders that they exhibit, I think that with my father we're extraordinarily lucky. And looking back on our time then, his friendship group with the men that survived
Yeah.
was terribly, terribly, terribly important to his mental health. We came down every year. They came down and marched. He died at 88 when he was 88, and he came down and marched probably until he was 85, despite having sort of arthritis and all this. He was very, very, very impressive man, and I think And my mum, I must say, she was a businesswoman. She was an amazing sort of businesswoman before her time. Ran a company for 17 years in Canberra when women didn't run anything in Canberra much. So pretty impressive parents.
Yeah. A lot of material to work with there. So, and of course, your mum being in a war zone, that was,
Yeah.
Darwin was an active combatant zone. So, yeah, what a tough situation, but clearly they were made of the right stuff.
Yep.
How did that play into you? Like, you're obviously a young person with, parents who have expectations, right? Did you feel that?
No. No, in retrospect, that's a great question. No, I didn't. I was unbelievably privileged. I was lucky enough to go to a girls' grammar school. I had an excellent education. My great-grandmother had left me some money, which I got at 21. I was able to afford to go and do my phys ed training in Sydney. and just very, very privileged. And I never forget that. It's, it's a, what opportunities I had. In terms of expectations, no, I don't. Maybe they were. I feel I was certainly self-driven to not not. I wouldn't say my life has ever been planned, really, except for the first step, which was, well, what do you want to do after school? And I went into physical education, and then from there, I've been incredibly fortunate. I've just many times just got tapped in terms of, we want this, or there's this opportunity for you, or I've been incredibly fortunate around that. That sent me to Asia on scholarship. It sent me to the USA on scholarship. Yes, and also back in Australia. So, I've been very, very lucky.
So those experiences and opportunities, what do you think really, you gained from that, like wisdom wise or experiential wise? What was the gifts of those things?
Well, I think one of the key elements that has helped define me were the travel opportunities that I've had, the exposure to different cultures. I was fortunate. My mum loved to travel, so we travelled quite a lot when I was young, and as young as 8 or 9, we went to Asia, and sort of travel really never stopped from there in terms of where opportunities were that we were given. But for me, just I think the exposure to different cultures, sort of Asia, the Americas, travel all over the world. I mean, extraordinarily lucky. Just respect for different cultures and different religions, different races.
Mm.
And having come from a privileged life in Australia, just to be able to, I think, continuously have that reinforced of how lucky I was, and to not squander, I think, those opportunities. Give everything 100%. In terms of wisdom, tolerance, not wasting time. I think I'm very much time is finite. Don't waste a lot of time. And life's too exciting, too interesting, too many opportunities, too many interesting people to hear their stories.
Yeah. That's I love the idea of maintaining gratitude for the opportunities when you see the privilege, right? How do you think you best put that into practice?
If I go to the present, I think the a serious situation, which was the situation that happened in and evolved into 2017. That experience of loneliness and separation, I think, has really struck home in terms of the importance of engagement and communicating and being with people, and recognising the importance of social health, which is somewhat of a new term being used now to make a distinction between mental, physical, and social. And that's all about the quality of our relationships and the importance of those. And it's not just about quantity, it's about the quality of those. That's the most important element. So I think in terms of how it manifests itself today with me, it's about, for me, as much as possible, the concept of kindness and caring, and spending time with people, not getting caught up so much in your own schedule that you're not listening, and actually listening to people. And I'm very, I'm a sort of a massive fan of Are You OK? And the switch that's made in terms of people recognizing the need to reach out and ask the tough question, having been in that space myself on a couple of occasions in my life. Yeah, it's about sort of kindness, I think. I think that's sort of how I try and live it now, is slow down a little bit and have time for people if possible.
Yeah.
Or sort of make time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you bring up kindness. Like kindness can be a concept people throw around it all the time. Be kind. Do kind. But as a competency, right? You're like, you're saying you're almost giving it much more gravitas, right? It's more important than that. How would you define kindness as a competency? What is kindness in action for you? How do you if it's so important, how do we encourage kindness? What does that look like?
Taking time, checking in with people. It's a mix of being and doing. There's a difference for me in that, in terms of doing things. You can make food for people. That's a kind thing to do. That's actually not a great skill of mine.
No.
I'm not a good cook.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more spending time with people or being in touch as much as possible. And for the people in my daily life, yes, trying to take time
Yeah.
to talk and listen, and do nice gestures if you can. It might not be making a beautiful fruit loaf, but it might be, doing other nice things, giving people lifts or offering or that sort of thing, as much as possible.
So do you think people are kind? Can they be kind? If doing and being is different, and that rings true for me, what is being kind, and are people okay with that? Like, do we need to teach or learn, or do we just allow being kind to happen?
I think, like most things, probably I take some of mine from role modeling,
Hmm.
both from childhood as well as just life experience, in terms of kind people, and how they demonstrated it and modelled it. And then from my own personal experience, what's mattered to me, what's been most helpful when I've been in bad times, in terms of kindness and people reaching out and checking in and asking that question, are you okay? Sorts of things at difficult times. And then it's also about, if you ask the question, you've got to have time to listen.
Mm.
Can't ask it and just move on and on to the next thing. No. If you ask the question, you need to take time to listen. It's a way of being, I think. Not, as much as possible, not getting so caught up in your own little egocentric, narcissistic world. Yeah, always making time if it seems the right thing to do.
Yeah. It's interesting because, your career was, high flying. You had, corporate experience, international exposure, highest level of organizations. And then, in 2017, as you've described, things, went awry, and there you found yourself in places you hadn't been before. Do you think that gave, what was about that got you from 2017 to 2019, where you turned being kind into an enterprise?
Difficult times. And one of the key elements of my survival, in many ways, was my getting up, joining. I'd already was part of and had been for some years, a Keep Fit group, which is called Lifestyle Adventure Training, and it had a name prior to that, but it's been the core of me getting out of bed every morning, and getting to a 6 a.m. class, mostly on the beach, down here in Hampton, and having an amazing group of friends who have been part of the journey peripherally, because they're just part of my life, but and some of them much closer, and a commitment to physical fitness that I knew would significantly impact my mental health. And I'm always commenting on that with the group in terms of recognizing the importance of mental health and how fitness impacts that. Very, very, very important. It was interesting. Um, uh, there's another group that meets at the same place as we meet down on the beach, and one of the participants in that was saying to me that her group always met and they went swimming and sort of swimming through winter and all that sort of thing, and she said, I always just thought it was a physical health thing until COVID came along, and then she realised we all suddenly had this wake up call that this was seriously about mental health and how important it was. And I love it when people get that connection. It's not just about going and running around and doing a few exercises and lifting a few weights, or even just going for a swim. The importance on mental health of physical health is just absolutely profound in my view. And if we could sort of get people out, even walking. People say, can we have, Chatty Cafe walking? It's like, absolutely, walk and chat. Absolutely, run and chat. You know what? I love what's happening at the moment. I'm thrilled, and I don't know how Chatty going to become part of it, but we've struggled to get young people on board with Chatty, and the fastest growing group of lonely people, as statistical evidence, are young people 18 to 25. So that's very, very scary. But what's happening is they've self-generated sort of running groups. And these running groups of young people are getting together and going for, runs. I don't know how long for, what the sort of rules are around that. But the nicest thing about that is after that, they all go for coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where, while they're running and chatting, but they sit down for coffee and have, have a fun social connection opportunity over coffee. And I absolutely love that. Absolutely love it. And if we could just get more young people out, going for a bit of a jog, even if they can't start, have a walking group, and then, just go off and have a coffee afterwards. That would be absolutely sensational if we could sort of bring that as part of consistent lifestyle across Australia for young people. That would be absolutely sensational. Yeah. And then people would say at the moment, the cost of living crisis, I must say, is really impacting dispensable income. So I'm just aware, to not be, too privileged around that. Some people can't afford to go to the coffee shop and have a coffee, but even if you go to your own home and with a group of people, if you're comfortable having them come in and get yourself a Nescafe out of the jar, and it won't cost you $5, and just connect.
I love that. I love the idea that finding the intersection of generations can be the coffee shop, right? While different activities relate to different age groups, right? And of course, the coffee shop can be a focus for generational paying it forward. Maybe the benefit of the boomers could buy the coffee for the young people doing it tough with cost of living issues. So who knows?
No, the pay it forward concept, it would be fantastic if we had more of that. But I would make a comment on the commercial hospitality settings. I think they didn't get as much acknowledgement as they should have in terms of the role they played during COVID. And where I live, coffee shops got bottles of champagne, cards, thank yous, flowers. People just said, you kept, to the baristas and to the management was, you kept me on the planet. I had a place to come for my 1 hour, particularly if you're in Victoria, my 1 hour out. I came for coffee and I met and just chatted, even though I kept 1.5 metre distance from people on the street waiting for their coffee. I talked to someone. I talked to another human being. That's how I maintain my mental health. And I don't think that they got nearly enough acknowledgement by the powers that be for the role they played during COVID to keep community connected. But I would say, I also think on the other side of that, I would like to think that cafe owners and management do recognise that there is some social responsibility that they have in terms of not just the concept of profit with purpose. I'm very, very keen on. And many venues that sign up for Chatty, that's what they're about. They take the money but they also recognise the well-being of their customers is extremely important. And they're the sorts of venues where Chatty goes well. If you're just in it for the profit, then that's probably not a Chatty venue. But if you're in it for not just that, but the engagement with your community, and many owners, they say that's what we do. We talk to the customers. That's what we do. That's why we're in it. We socialise with them. They're absolutely sensational Chatty venues. Yeah, and we don't require them to necessarily have a table or a volunteer, which some other settings do. We just do sit, chat, share, care.
Yeah.
It's a sticker. Just says, come on in, sit down, and we'll talk to you, and we'll encourage other people sitting by themselves if they want to talk to you too.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's a beautiful model. What, going, now to, like, after navigating that, those challenging times, and then you looked around and saw an opportunity to make a difference in that particular zone, right? In that sort of connecting and bringing people into their own team. You had a team that helped you get through, and I wondered, tell us how you decided that you found UK and how you decided you were going to shape Chatty Australia. What
I have
happened
no
there?
idea. I've got no answer to that. It just seemed like, I had an idea to do it myself. I was going to call it Coffee Connect.
Yeah.
There was a business in New South Wales that had the name, and I contacted them, like, could I steal the name off you? Because they weren't doing much with it. And they were, no. I was like, oh. And then I found out about the UK, and they sort of already had a bit of a model, so that's how we went down that road. But if I laugh, because talk about, sow a seed and it turns into an oak tree.
Mm.
I had no idea what I was getting into. There was no serious kind of real thought about what this, I couldn't project forward. It's like starting a charity in Australia. It just seemed like a really good idea, John.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And oh my God, the things I've learned. It's just been quite an incredible journey. But yes, certainly a very sharp learning curve. But we're still here. We're still resilient. We haven't done it perfectly, and we're not, because we don't have all the funding that we need to have the resources that we need to do it as well as I'd like. We're pursuing those through corporate partners, grants, government. Anybody out there wants to support Chatty, we're looking for partners. And we've got a fantastic organisational chart in terms of what we know we need and could set up, and absolutely dynamite. And we've got people who really want to work for Chatty. And I would say in that from a financial perspective, we've had some brilliant volunteers, but I think at some point you have to recognise that and respect that people deserve some income for the time they're putting in, and that's sort of the position I hold on that. I personally, that was my decision to start it up. I don't need the funding. It'd be nice to have some, but I'm not taking a salary. I haven't taken a salary for 5 years. There's nothing really to take.
Yeah.
But I have people who want to be national operations manager, national volunteer manager, regional managers, state managers. I've got people ready to leap into those roles, but we need resources to fund them.
Oh, beautiful. So you're, obviously it's an operation, like, as you point out, it's difficult to have a charity sometimes in Australia, with, well, despite all the worthiness, it's not a measure of worthiness. It's a measure of, sometimes I don't know what it measures, but, yeah. What I'm interested in what do you think will make the difference with Chatty Cafe? Why is this really important for Australia?
I think we're living in a somewhat disconnected society at the moment. Social media, for me, in many cases, antisocial.
Yeah.
I think it's counterproductive. And I think the loneliness statistics for young people are an indicator of that. It's not about how many friends you've got on Facebook. It's like, if you hit a rough patch, how many do you have to reach out to who will really, really, really be there for you? So it's that disconnection element that I think we need to be taking a serious look at across Australia, and that sort of drives me forward, I think, in terms of what we're doing. Yeah, and I do think this year in particular, going into financial year 25, it's the charities are really, really doing it tough, from the biggest to the smallest, and we're just a relative startup. We haven't even made sort of annual 250,000 or anything like that. 100 and something. To the big ones that have got some millions, which should be great in Kitty. But it's tough times for charities, and I do think that government needs to recognise the role that we're playing, and the need to. There's a real thinking around that we don't need resources. Well, people just volunteer. During COVID, 1/3 of volunteers disappeared across Australia, and they haven't come back in the numbers. So, and the resources disappeared, and people now, during COVID and now, don't have dispensable income, etc. So donations, etc., for many are down, etc. So it's a very, very difficult time for charities, and it seems like there's this increase sort of as the need gets greater, the capacity for the charities to meet the need is dropping. So we're just getting wider and wider in terms of the separation between the need and the capability or capacity. So yeah, I think government needs to sort of have a bit of a wake up call and realise that without social connection, without social fabric, the organisation, the country will begin to slowly diminish.
Yeah, absolutely.
In its connectedness. And I think we're seeing that already in terms of statistics right now, in terms of whether it be crime or homelessness, suicide, those sorts of things. I think a bit of money thrown our way would go a very, very, very long way to some really great organisations. Ours is just one. We're just one initiative. I mean, there are heaps out there. And I'm not interested in competition. I'm interested only in collaboration.
Yeah.
With others to get as many people given opportunities to connect as possible. That will cost them financially minimal, but in terms of mental and social health and physical health, optimum outcomes.
I love talking about the Pareto rule, 80-20 rule, principle, because 80% of the well-being really can be involved on a community basis. The community can only needs 20% of the funding to make 80% of the headway, right? Support people around them, and we do that not for money, but because it's our life. It's the life of the community and the people we love around us. So I couldn't agree more. So interesting then, assuming that like situation does seem grim and social determinants are becoming a real issue, things like homelessness and loneliness. And there's been some research out that loneliness is more damaging physically than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So what do you hope for? What's your vision for Chatty going forward?
The combined vision across the UK and ourselves, and I would mention we've got a wonderful young a woman in the USA starting up Chatty in the USA at the moment, which is fantastic. Is that the concept of chatty tables or places where customers or participants are encouraged to sit together and chat, and welcomes everyone at the table, no matter what the social demographic, to have those ubiquitous across Australia, that no matter where you go, whichever cafe you walk into, wherever you're traveling and want somewhere to go and feel welcome, that's ubiquitous everywhere across Australia, and that we are a welcoming country. We've always been known as a welcoming country. That social fabric disconnection that's happening at the moment We need to repair that and then just sort of continue back with the concept of mateship that we've always had in this country. And there's a little something that's got lost along the way about who we are as a nation and our reaching out. We're still doing it, but not in the numbers that we need to. And reach out to your neighbours, find out, who's living upstairs, next doors, next to you, whatever. Yeah. And the whole concept of, multiculturalism, etc., which is absolutely sensational in terms of the words that we say, but we have to work a bit harder in that area too, I think, in terms of reaching out to people from different cultures, etc. But the big picture for Chatty is that in social hospitality venues across Australia, whether they be commercial or community, that we offer opportunities, whether they be through Chatty Cafe or anything else, for social connection.
Beautiful. And the Glenys that's separate from Chatty, what do you look forward to? What's your vision for your time going forward?
That was great. I was just sharing with you before we started recording about the drive down from Townsville unexpectedly over Easter, and deciding what's important for me was the importance of nature. I do as much outdoor stuff and trekking as I can. So keeping that up. Animals are incredibly important to me. Family and friends, obviously, social connection and kindness. These were sort of things that were areas of importance as well as values that were important. Yeah. So going forward for myself, getting a bit older, a bit of a better balance at the moment than the hours I'm working on Chatty and some opportunity in terms of a bit more probably time to engage, whatever, beyond it. It's not a job. It's never a job to do it without the Chatty umbrella. Just to do those sorts of things with people I really want to be with. My brother, for example, I'm sort of reaching out more to him and saying, "Come on, we go trekking." We went to Nepal together.
Oh wow!
Want him to do Larapinta with me, and
Wow.
doing a few treks myself, doing the Camino. Not all 800 kilometres, but
Well, that's the big three there. I'll be quiet here because I struggle to walk down to the local shop, but that's impressive. So if you can rack them up,
yeah. So a bit more of that, but just a bit more time, a family. My partner and I now have a grandson in the family, so spending some time with Freddie, and just taking time to be with special people, and just every day recognizing the importance of those connections. I've got an amazing group of grammar friends that I went to school with, and I think there's 7. One's passed away, and while they mostly live in Canberra, just trying to remain connected with them, spend a bit more time with them, with family in Canberra. I don't get up there as much as I'd like. There's family in Sydney, Melbourne. I spend quite a bit of time, as much as I can, with them. So family and friends, and my dogs.
So it's a good list of values there. What is important about being true to your values? What do you now know after this journey?
I think nobody wins in a war. I'd like to see the end of that. It's a bit of a hippie in younger days, so we all held hands around the old Parliament House and sang "Give Peace a Chance." It was great. That'd be great. And from my father's experience, I don't think anybody wins in a war.
No.
So just doing whatever I can to work towards peace, climate change, looking after the environment,
and being kind.
Yeah, being kind, just being as much as you can. The nicest person you can be. I mean, I'm not a big fan of anger. I've had times when I've been very angry, and I just anger's counterproductive. I don't know whether it drives you forward that much. I think it probably holds you back. But no, good deep questions. So I'll think further. I'm sorry I haven't thought about those.
No, that you've been full of
Before we chatted.
wisdom, full of
Yeah.
wisdom, and really, really value your insights on some of those. So I won't torture you any further with with more, but I do at this point in time, like you've shared some of your story so generously and some of your vision as well. So what would you then say, like somebody's looking at this online and they're going to say, wow, that's an amazing, amount of legacy and, an incredible amount of energy to do something different in the world. What would you tell them that they're capable of doing?
Okay. I've got once again a bit of a don't know what the correct grammar term for it is. I'm a huge believer in the power of one,
Mm,
and I think, yeah, I think nobody should underestimate their capacity, no matter what their background, to make a difference in the world, even if it's just to one person. That's sort of where the kindness element comes in, or bigger picture. Not to get so caught up in your. I saw. I watched with my partner yesterday because I'm going to do the Camino. We watched The Way, My Way. I
mm.
don't know if you've
Yeah,
seen.
it's amazing. Yeah.
It's a fantastic sort of true story about going on a trek and sort of doing a pilgrimage, not a religious pilgrimage really, but a pilgrimage to.
Well, it's about identity, isn't it? It's about identity, about being someone. Yeah.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
who you are. And I really liked his comment about that all the stuff and baggage that we carry with us, it's just a burden.
Mm.
Just sort of get rid of all the peripheral stuff as much as you can sensibly. And I don't know about, I'm obviously getting older and I'm just trying to declutter.
Mm. Yeah.
Simplify your life. Not, of course, in terms of people that are homeless, that's a terrible situation, and not to that degree, I'm suggesting. But let's try and declutter a little bit and have the opportunity to think through what is important and how you might focus on it. But no, everybody, power of one, and everybody's got a story. That's very much a chatty thing. Everybody's got a story to share, and take the time to listen.
Well, that's an amazing segue into Kintsugi Heroes, because we want to hear everybody's story as well. So, and it's been a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing today and for being so open and inspiring. And of course, I would just say, you've got 70 volunteers. I'd love that to be 700 volunteers. So,
So would I.
yeah. So hopefully that's this is one moment of inspiration for people out there to go and sign up to have conversations at coffee shops. Right.
Can I spruik the website if anybody?
Of course, absolutely.
chattycafeaustralia.org.au.
It's been wonderful. Thank you, Glenys.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, John, for such a great opportunity to have a chat.
No, it's been terrific. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Kintsugi Heroes. Thank you to Colin Lilly for permission to use Broken as our theme music for this series. If you enjoyed this conversation, share the podcast with a friend and let us know by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support Kintsugi Heroes and the stories we share, head to kintsugiheroes.com.au and follow the instructions to make a tax-deductible donation. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.